Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. If you're a grade 7 science learner diving into the MATATAG curriculum, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're going to be breaking down the fundamental building blocks of literally all living things. I am so excited to be your guide as we explore the microscopic world that makes life totally possible. So let's kick things off with a question. Have you ever wondered what living things actually look like if you zoom in really close? Let's just imagine for a second that we could zoom in past the skin, past the green leaves of a plant, or the rough bark of a tree, all the way down to see the tiny structures keeping everything alive. What would we see? Well, it turns out we wouldn't just see a solid mass. We'd actually see millions of tiny, bustling, microscopic rooms all working together perfectly. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover what is a cell, the pioneers behind the cell theory, the essential cell parts, those specialized organelles, plant versus animal cells, and finally, observing cells in action. Okay, part 1. What is a cell? The true foundation of all living organisms. To build a strong foundation for this topic, we've got to start with the absolute basics. Whether you're talking about a giant tree towering in a forest, a dog running through the park, or, well, you, absolutely everything living is made of these microscopic building blocks that we call cells. A cell is officially defined as the smallest structural and functional unit of all living organisms. Basically, it's the absolute smallest thing that can carry out all the processes needed for life, like taking in nutrients, releasing energy, and reproducing. Now, some organisms, like certain bacteria, only need one single cell to survive. But larger organisms, like us humans, we're made up of trillions of these guys. Moving right along to part 2, the cell theory pioneers. This is all about how scientists discover this completely hidden world. Now, our understanding of cells definitely didn't just happen overnight. It actually took a team of brilliant minds making observations over hundreds of years. It all started way back in 1665 when an English scientist named Robert Hooke looked at a super thin slice of dead cork under a microscope. He saw these tiny box-like structures that reminded him of the small, simple rooms that monks lived in. In Latin, those rooms were called cellulae. So he named them cells, and the name stuck. Fast forward to 1838, and a German botanist named Matthias Schleiden concluded that all plants are made of cells. The very next year, in 1839, a zoologist named Theodor Schwann concluded the exact same thing about animals. Finally, in 1855, a physician named Rudolf Virchow realized a crucial detail. All cells actually divide, meaning they come from other pre-existing cells. So, by combining all of these incredible discoveries, scientists put together what we now call the cell theory. It's basically the 3 golden rules of biology. First, all living things are made of one or more cells. Second, the cell is the basic unit of structure and function. And third, all cells come from pre-existing cells. This third point is a real game changer because it essentially proves that your body grows and your cuts heal simply because your pre-existing cells are constantly dividing and multiplying. All right. Part 3, essential cell parts, the 3 basic structures you'll find in every single cell. Let's zoom in on the physical structure of the cell itself. Now, every single cell, whether it's plant or animal, has these 3 essential parts. To make this easy to remember, I want you to think of the cell membrane as a protective fence or a strict gatekeeper. It's a thin, flexible covering that controls what water, nutrients, and waste enter and leave the cell. Next up, think of the cytoplasm as a sort of protective jelly. It's this gel-like fluid that fills the inside of the cell where all the other structures safely float around. And finally, we have the nucleus. You can think of this as the brain or the control center. It carries your DNA, those genetic instructions that direct literally all the activities of the cell. That brings us to part 4, the specialized organelles. These are the little organs performing highly specific jobs. So, now that we have the basic layout, let's explore the tiny structures suspended inside that jelly-like cytoplasm. These are called organelles, which translates to little organs. You can kind of think of these organelles like specific departments in a highly efficient factory. You have the mitochondria, famously known as the powerhouse of the cell. It breaks down food to produce ATP energy. Then you have the ribosomes. These are tiny dots acting as the manufacturing department, assembling proteins based on those instructions from the nucleus. The endoplasmic reticulum, or ER for short, acts as a transportation highway. The rough ER has ribosomes and transports proteins, while the smooth ER handles lipids. After that, the Golgi apparatus acts like the shipping department, packaging all these proteins for delivery. And finally, the lysosomes act as the waste disposal system, digesting unused materials. They're actually sometimes called the suicidal bags of the cell because of this cleanup job. Part 5. Plant versus animal cells. Different needs, different structures. Let's take a slight detour here. While plants and animals both share those basic factory parts we just talked about, they obviously have very different survival needs in the real world, right? And their cells completely reflect that. When you look at them closely, their shapes immediately give away a major difference. Because plants don't have skeletons but still grow to incredible heights, they need some serious structural support at the microscopic level. They get this from a tough, rigid outer layer called a cell wall, which gives plant cells a fixed, sort of box-like shape. Animal cells, on the other hand, don't have a cell wall. We have bones for structure, so animal cells get to stay rounder, more irregular, and a whole lot more flexible. Let's recap the unique equipment each cell type carries based on how they survive. Plants can't exactly walk to a grocery store, so they must make their own sugar from sunlight. They do this using chloroplasts, which are totally absent in animal cells. Plants also have one massive central vacuole to store water and keep the cell firm. Animal cells, however, rely heavily on lysosomes. Because animals actually take in and eat complex food, they need those lysosome enzymes to digest it. Animal cells also have centrosomes to help with cell division, which plant cells manage to do without. And finally, part 6, observing cells in action. Let's talk about safely using a microscope in the lab. Okay, so how do we actually get to see all this amazing stuff in a classroom setting without, damaging our delicate equipment? Being a microscopic detective requires following a few exact steps. This ensures we safely find our specimens without cracking the expensive glass slides. First, always carry the microscope with 2 hands. When you're handling your specimen slides, hold them strictly by the edges so you don't smudge the viewing area. And here is a big one. Always start your observation on the low-power objective lens. It gives you a much wider field of view, making it so much easier to actually locate your specimen before you slowly adjust the focus knob and zoom in closer. When you eventually do this activity in your own lab, you might look at an onion bulb to see a plant cell, and maybe a cheek swab for an animal cell. But here's a crucial tip. Cells in their natural state are mostly clear and completely transparent. If you just put them under a lens, you won't see a whole lot. That is exactly why we have to add a drop of stain, like iodine for the onion or methylene blue for the cheek cell. These stains give color to the specific parts of the cell, allowing those tiny organelles, especially the nucleus and the cell wall, to really pop and become visible to the human eye. All right, let's recap the major takeaways from our unhurried journey today. We've seen that cells are absolutely the smallest structural and functional unit of life. Inside, they contain highly specific organelles acting like specialized departments in miniature factories. We learned that plant and animal cells share a basic design, but they differ greatly based on how they get food and maintain structural support. But most importantly, we learned that these tiny, microscopic rooms are working incredibly hard together, constantly dividing and producing energy just to keep your whole body functioning, healing, and growing every single second of the day. Before we go, I want you to think about that amazing biological process for a moment. If your cells are constantly dividing to replace worn-out parts, how many brand new cells do you think your body has created just since this explainer began? It is a mind-blowing number to think about. Millions of cells in your body have just divided while we were learning this material. I really hope this deep dive leaves you with a rock-solid foundation for your grade 7 science class and makes you super eager to uncover more secrets of life in your lab activities. Keep questioning, keep observing, and keep learning.